Nothing could beat this amount of peak, oh my god.
That's not real!
Mario Party has truly come a long way from the decade-long rut that plagued the series post Mario Party DS. Two of the games on Switch in particular have a place in the conversation with deciding the best game in the series. It's one of my personal favorite series for the gambling and manipulation that results from it. It's also one of the best games to watch content-wise. Fuck, I like it so much that this was essentially my reaction to Jamboree's reveal.
Let's go! There's a mall? Is that
As much as a mainstay as this series is, though, it's had a very rocky history with creating new ideas. It has to bring so many new ideas to the table that the desire to create something new and innovative inadvertently leads to underbaked ideas. Best, it leads to throwaway minigames, but at worst, it can ruin entire games. While I love this series, it definitely brings up a software design topic that a lot of devs do their best to avoid when it comes to thinking about the series on a design level. On a macro level, Mario Party's constant barrage of new ideas means these games are packed with content, but on a micro level, it means some things will inherently be more fleshed out than others. It's this aspect of Mario Party that I want to explore today, give a more design or developer-oriented take on the newest game, Jamboree, and how the series that tries its best to be the superstar doesn't always make it. The term that I've been dancing around is something developers try to avoid: feature creep, or scope creep, depending on who you ask. It's a software dev term that is used to describe when the project has a scope that is too large for the developers to reasonably realize in the time that they have to make it happen. It's putting too many features into a game or a piece of software to where it becomes too much to manage. And that is what Mario Party suffers from the most, more than anything in the modern day. For the normal people in the room, this series, more so in the last 10 years or so, has lacked the focus that the best games in this series have towards its main modes. But don't get me wrong, these games have always had this problem. It's had this dartboard mentality when it comes to thinking and implementing new ideas and gimmicks for the series. I think the best place to start with this conversation is in the case of Mario Party 5, a game that tried to reinvent the item system for the series, but the lack of time and a desire to make a game with a bunch of bonus content means a lot of the board mechanics were not well thought out at all. The intent behind the item system is to essentially make it so every game of Mario Party 5 is entirely different from the last. You could put down capsules on the board or use them on yourself in the name of capitalism, potentially littering every space with random events. So basically you get random capsules that sometimes have random effects, you can randomly land on these things, and most of the time these capsules don't even give the user anything. And that's not even counting the fact that there's board events that also are most of the time fucking random. It makes the series-long struggle to beat the luck-based allegations not beat those allegations. And you know they didn't intend for it to be like this because the next game in the series, you know, the one that came out a year later, directly addresses all of these issues. It's a game that tries its best to do so many things with its mechanics, but does not have the time to properly understand the flaws in those design concepts. It has Koopa Kid though, so at least it's still kind of peak. Mario Party 1 through 8 honestly did very well with negating feature creep the best they can. Other than 5 and Advanced just not working the way the devs wanted them to, the main thing the rest of the series does is just have board gimmicks that may or may not work. Because these classic games lacked the time to do anything to try to overhaul the series, a lot of them made slight tweaks to the board game formula. But whether or not they worked out, it did not necessarily mean that the entire game had a feature creep problem. They just may have had boards that were flawed. Not to say some of these games weren't victims of feature creep or software creep either, but considering the series was on a yearly release schedule for a while, I think these classic games do very well in terms of not falling into the trap of feature creep. The reason I take jabs at Mario Party 5 is just because you can tell the year-long development cycle just wasn't enough for them to properly think out the design of the board mechanics. I know most people would believe that this is where I dunk on Mario Party 9, 10, and the rest of the slop that came out between 2010 and 2018, and all I have to say is, yeah! Mario Party 9 in particular is arguably one of the worst offenders of the devs not having their scope and goals in check. But the interesting thing about it is how this game has this issue, because it's not the car. Well, it is, but not exactly. Basically, the ex-Hudson Soft employees that formed ND Cube had a very strong shift in design philosophies during the development for Wii Party, which bled into the design for Mario Party 9. There's an Iwata Asks interview from after the launch of Wii Party, and it really puts into perspective the scope and weight of expectations placed on the devs pre-Mario Party 9. While I've never exactly thought that party games were for children, I think some people have the idea that adults only played them in order to interact with their children. But when I see the TV ads of the game, which simply showed how the 5 members of Arashi had naturally enjoyed playing Wii Party, I feel like we have redefined party games and established a new standard. So I hope everyone will play this game for a long time to come. It's this new design philosophy that everyone needs to be active in the game, and the desire to set a new standard that created the drastic overhaul of Mario Party that 9 decided to, well, fucking speed off a cliff with. I don't necessarily think that Mario Party 9 has a feature creep problem within the game itself, but I know for a fact that the desire to create something that will redefine party game standards, redefine how Mario Party works at its core, is something that would have needed much more than 5 years to truly get right. The rest of the games after this, before the Switch era, don't have a scope creep problem, but they're either too tone deaf than a CS major trying to get a job out of college, or they're made as a cash grab, a nothing release used to fill out Nintendo's calendar year and nothing more. Why do I own these? Anyways, that brings us to the main reason I wanted to make this video: the Switch Mario Party games. Due to the devs coming after the Mario Party equivalent to hitting Tower 1, 2, and then the Pentagon, the next release basically had to be a return to form in some way. And like, we got it, but this new game is some of the worst scope creep this series has ever seen. Super Mario Party sure is a video game, one that you sure can play with your friends even, I guess. I don't know, man. Respect to this game for letting me cook a meat cube as Bowser and bringing back the classic board gameplay, I guess, but these boards are just not it. There's only 4 of them, they're small with very little going on. One of them is a real stinker in particular for just being boring in every experience I've had with it. The design of these boards just does not inspire any sorts of decision making, and the economy of the game itself is just all out of whack, dude. The minigames are pretty cool though, minus the ally mechanic. As neat as it is, it makes some of the minigames unfair if you happen to be lonely. But the trend that Super carries from Wii Party that reeks of feature creep is that this game is filled with different modes. River Survival, some fuck-ass new rhythm game mode, Partner Party, the various minigame modes, and a single player mode. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if the modes themselves were more substantial. River Survival and the soundstage are fine, but I don't think they're worth trading for something like an extra board, or expanding on the existing ones in some meaningful way. It's not like these boards go faster because they're smaller and have less going on too. All modes, the board game included, just take way too fucking long with unneeded cutscenes and waiting at every turn. Dude, at the end of some minigames, they make you high-five your teammates, and man, do I get excited when I have to sit through that.
Yeah, shit.
It's the needless interruptions and things that, to me, detract from the core party game gameplay that plagues this entry. It makes what should be a return to form for the Mario Party series feel like an unfocused mess of ideas that occasionally resembles what it's trying to replicate. Super wants to be like 9, 10 in the 3DS titles, but it wants to make longtime fans also happy at the same time. It tries to have its cake and eat it too, which does not work in the grand scheme of things. Because the design of the game is built around all of these different features and modes, and since none of them are properly fleshed out in a way that makes any of them feel meaningful, it means that Super Mario Party is going to be an entry in the franchise that is forgotten over time, rather than looked back upon fondly. And I think they finally understood the assignment when Superstars came around. In terms of the goal this game sets out to do, I think this is as focused as Mario Party has been in years. The main problem is that they got the board game part down, preferences for some board choices aside, but now the rest of the game is so barren. There are little to no extra modes, which I know is the thing I was ragging on Super Mario Party for. But the problem there was that the focus was so widespread that nothing felt substantial. Now is the opposite problem. We have a game with a very direct focus on something, but lacks any of the other extras that made the other Mario Party entries feel well-rounded. There isn't a scope creep in Superstars. There's just the bare minimum features and amount of content. I still have a soft spot for this one for letting me play the Mario Party 6 prototype in HD though. But that brings us to the latest entry in the second Mario Party to be just fucking super. Jamboree. So Jamboree is probably the closest modern Mario Party has gotten to being able to have its cake and eat it too. While I don't think the boards are amazing or anything, I really like them all. They drastically improved Mario's Rainbow Castle, made objectively the funniest board in the entire franchise. It's a damn solid entry in the series. I just hope they go further in the future with more customizable rule sets and stuff. Pro rules and being able to turn off motion controls is neat though. But the biggest critique of the main board game I can give is that everything just takes too damn long now. Genuinely, the pace of the game has gotten fucking out of hand with how long these games can take. The fact it takes over an hour for a 10-turn game now is absurd. Showdown minigames taking up to 3 minutes is insane. Like, dude, this one minigame is just straight pinball for 3 minutes. And not just that, it's bad pinball. It sucks so much ass. In terms of scope, the minigames are kinda just the focal point of Jamboree's feature creep. So, time for some nerd shit. The game advertises over 110 minigames within Jamboree, and while not a lie, 78 of those are playable in the main party mode. While I do like a chunk of these, and despite having one of the funniest 1v3s in the entire series, I don't think a lot of the minigames present in Jamboree are that great, with the showdown ones being exceptionally bad. They take too long, are sometimes very boring, and other times don't even function properly, which is another issue entirely. About 15 of these minigames are motion controlled, which is not a problem in theory, but these are very hit or miss. They either work or they don't, and some are just very reminiscent of the funny soda can game from Mario Party 8. The best motion control minigames here are Hammer It Home, Twist and Sort, Shuttle Scuttle, and Tilt-A-Golf, since they all use the motion in ways that genuinely benefit the minigame. The rest are Waggle Fests that force you to rotate or jack off the controller in ways that just don't work most of the time, to the point where I don't even see why they bothered with motion in the first place really. It drags the minigame count down by a lot when this game already has a larger problem of spreading the minigames too thin. I think the insult to injury for the minigames in Jamboree is that not all of them are even from this game, with 10 of them being returning minigames. All of these are pretty good fan favorite minigames, except they decided to bring back these two for some reason. The minigame selection in Jamboree just feels like the developers were too focused on creating unique control schemes, fill out all of the criteria for this ultimate party game experience, and it just doesn't work. It feels as though they wanted to mesh the things that people liked about Superstars and Super Mario Party in the minigames, and this was the result of it, which I think they could have done a lot better. The motion minigames are the real stinkers here, in particular, due to not functioning properly or not having a good reason to be motion minigames, and I think they harm the game more than they add to it. I'm not against this series having motion controls, but I just hope the next game has a better reason for them even being here. The other 30-ish minigames come from the other game's modes. That's right, they're doing it again. The same rhythm game mode is back, and I'm gonna be honest, they should just make these minigames playable in the board game as free-for-alls, and then make this a minigame mode if they insist on keeping it here. The mode itself, like how it was in Super Mario Party, is a small distraction, and it's fine. I just wish they repurposed the content for other things. The other two side modes, Toad's Item Factory and Paratroopa Fight School, are similar to each other, just small distractions, with the Item Factory being the much better of the two. I don't even know what they were cooking with Fight School. I've played this shit shit twice with 2 different people, and both times the other person just gave up and didn't want to play anymore. It feels like such an afterthought. Mario and Luigi are the only playable characters for this. It's just kinda lame, and its motion controls demand way too much of the players. At the very least, with the item factory, I can see the appeal, and it's not awful or anything. I doubt it took much time to develop either. The 2 big side additions that definitely took away the focus from the main party game mode are Bowser's Kaboom Squad and the Koopathlon. 2 modes that I genuinely do think are pretty fun, but I don't think that they were worth the priority given to them. Because they are both online modes, they are heavily dependent on having enough players to properly fill the lobbies, but in the few times I've gotten to play them both, very few actual humans join these lobbies, and that was only 2 months after launch. Bowser's Kaboom Squad in particular is more notable for this because you can really feel the lack of human presence since all of the minigames are very cooperative. It's not as bad in Koopathlon because of the mode structure, but it's still very noticeable. The biggest problem with these modes though is that they both suffer from being too repetitive. Koopathlon suffers from this part more, but both have it going on its page just because neither of them have enough going on in them, nor the minigame count to truly feel substantial. For Koopathlon, they definitely could have just pulled from some of the coin minigames in the party mode, and by extent allowed some of its minigames to have variants playable in the main party mode. It would make both minigame counts a lot more well-rounded. Kaboom Squad though is neat as hell. I just think it needs a bit more sauce and also people actually playing it. Dude, it's me and little Timmy versus the world most of the time. Fun modes, I just wish they were more, which is kind of just the theme of this video. It may seem like I dislike Jamboree, which could not be further than the truth. I've dropped like 40 hours into the game at the time of writing this, and I got the game like a month ago. It's up there, man. I just hope in the future the series focuses more on the main board game rather than separate side distractions. Don't get me wrong though, I want these side modes, but the more they disconnect themselves from the main game, the higher and higher the scope for the game gets. The devs have to continuously divide their attention more and more to the point where the game can have very bizarre oversights and a lack of focus. And while I don't think it makes Jamboree a bad entry or anything, I think it heavily detracts from how good this game could be. There's a severe lack in polish in some of the minigames. The level of strictness for the party mode's rule sets is very odd, and the length of the game all feel like the results of time constraints due to too large of a scope for the project. The main problem I have with modes like Bowser's Kaboom Squad or River Survival is that they just don't feel substantial enough to be fun after an hour, and to me, that's one of the worst things a party game can be. The reason something like the minigame modes have been so great for this series is because they recontextualize content from the party mode in a new way. They don't take a lot of time to develop either, and are neat extras when you don't want to play the main party game. They accomplish the goal of being an extra while also not feeling like they're too out of scope from the rest of the game. The Mario Party series has been nothing but a series of ruts and creative hurdles for these developers. But for all it's worth, they got me yapping about how much I want this series to be better. My main hope for the future of Mario Party is that they have a much stronger focus on the things that truly matter to the core gameplay loop. More options to rule sets, good, well thought out minigames, and more than 5 boards, please and thank you. I'm honestly okay if they keep pulling from past games for minigames and even boards. I just want their choices to benefit the main focus of the game, to not just say fuck it, bring back fucking Rules Land, and then follow up with another Paratroopers Flight School on the side. But on that note, I also hope they keep making side modes, if they want to anyways. The devs clearly have an interest in making Mario Party more than the board game, but whatever they do, I want the main party mode to always be the main focus, for the side modes to not be as intrusive to the game's scope as they are in Jamboree or Super. I want this series to be better, flesh itself out, ditch the sterilized art style and UI design that plagues the new games, and fucking knock down Mario Party 6 already. They're not beating the night and day cycle, oh my god. The reason I yap about scope regarding this silly, not at all luck-based party game so much is because because scope and dodging feature creep is one of the most important things to any video game. It's something that Mario Party struggles with a lot, despite how much fun the series always will be. And as a game dev, it's very important to me to be able to look at something like Mario Party and acknowledge that even the developers under the helm of Nintendo struggle with feature creep. It's humbling, really, and I'm glad that the devs seem to be moving along in the right direction with the series. Very excited to see what these devs cook up next, because if it's anything better than Jamboree, we might actually have a game that's worth calling a superstar. Hey there. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed my descent into nonsense no one really cares about. But if you do care and you like what you see, consider subscribing for more in the future, and also following me on Blue Sky, where I post infrequent updates about game dev related stuff I'm working on, or info about my next videos, and general shit posting from time to time. What do you expect? I can't promise very frequent ones right now because I am very busy with school and stuff. I do plan on doing a lot more stuff with this channel very soon, streaming videos more than every 10 months, the works, you know, but we'll see if that actually happens, but stay tuned. But that's all I got for you, so